We are live now.
Let's call this meeting to order. See that everyone is present. Next item is a moment of reflection and respect. Thank you very much. Item 3.1, confirmation of the agenda. We have a mover and a seconder for confirmation of the agenda, moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Desrosiers. Any discussion on that? None? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Remind people of the declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. We have some timed delegation, so we're going to skip down on the agenda down to item 6, the adoption of council and committee minutes. Mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Van Raes, second by Councillor Chapman. Discussion on any of those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. 6.2, minutes to receive. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Oslash, seconded by Councillor Rahi. Any discussion on any of those minutes? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. 6.2.4, the Elmer Police Services meeting. And the part of the agenda on that particular meeting was to receive the annual report from the Police Services Board. Actually, it was on the following meeting after that. But anyway, the Police Services Board report is now available. It shows that there has been good success on the closing of cases within the town of Elmer. The Police Services Board is pleased with the results of and the actions of the members of the police service, and I encourage all of the members of the public to take a look at the annual report and realize how fortunate we are to have the service level that we do have.
And I will second that. Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Desrosiers?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's regarding item 6.2.1, the county council minutes. This was listed in the paper as well, but the safety concerns regarding Ron McNeil Line and Imperial Road that was brought up by Councillor Widner. I just want to know where, I don't see any comments in here from you on the Elgin County Board. Where do you stand with regards to that issue?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of that. Can you?
Sorry. The safety concerns regarding Ron McNeil Line and Imperial Road that was brought up by Councillor Widner at the county council meeting. Where do you stand on that issue? Did you make comment on that at the meeting, or?
I did not. I remember the issue. I did not comment on that. It's been a long-standing issue, and staff made a report indicating the seriousness of that particular intersection. Certainly, I would support the proposal to do something with that intersection. Whether a roundabout is the right thing or not is not the question. But if you're asking where I stand on it, I certainly would be concerned with the number of accidents that happen in that corner. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Consent agenda. We have a resolution.
That items 7.1 through 7.4 of the June 21st, 2023 consent agenda be received for information, and that actions be taken as noted.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Desrosiers, seconded by Deputy Mayor Barber. Any comments on these? Councillor Oslach.
I'd like to pull 7.4, the SLWC update. And I've been getting a lot of reports, actually annoyed reports from people about this, the letters being sent out in the mail with the town logo on it. And it's really confusing. Most people consider it as spam, as telephone advertising or mail advertising. So I would like to have a fully explanation for the public.
I think we'll get an explanation from Josh here in a moment. When you say you'd like to pull 7.4, do you want to pull it as a separate vote?
Yes.
So I believe we'd have to have a mover and a seconder in order to pull it for a separate vote.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly so that up to council, up to Councillor Oslich for that procedurally, if you have separate direction other than receiving it for information, pulling it would be the correct course of action on that. I would also note, if we do choose to pull it, we would resolve the first three items, so 7.1 through 7.3, being that those are moved and seconded, and then we would move on to item 7.4 on its own for further discussion.
So what is it that you would like to do?
I would like to pull it.
Pull it, okay. So at this point, we're going to move forward with 7.1, 7.3, and 7.4 for discussion on 7.71 to 7.3. Comments on that? I do want to make a comment on 7.1, which was a letter of support for the East Elgin Family Health Team, which I signed. This letter supports the East Elgin Family Health Team, along with several other health teams in the county. And in fact, it's inclusive of the Elgin, Ontario Health Team, which is asking the province for funding for more nurse practitioners and other items that are on the particular ask list, and there's money at the provincial government to do that. I should note that the specific ask for this area, for the East Elgin Family Health Team, was that more nurse practitioners be hired, because recently, within the last 3 or 4 months, I'm not exactly the time frame on this, but recently the province has lifted the requirement of the East Elgin Family Health Team for nurse practitioners to deal only with people who have been rostered, so that the only way you can kind of see them if they don't have a doctor and want to see a nurse practitioner is kind of a catch-22, because you couldn't see a nurse practitioner because you hadn't been rostered. Now you don't have to be rostered in order to see the nurse practitioner, which will help out of thousands of people within this community, which is a good move by the province. So this letter helps support that kind of concept, that nurse practitioners are given more ability to see people. Just to comment on that. Anything else? Seeing none, then call the question. All those in favor of and that is carried. Now we return to 7.4. We need a mover and a seconder because it's been pulled, right? Moved by Councillor Oslach, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Very well. You already had comments on it. Anyone else? Councillor Rye.
I have a question, or through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Does anyone know how many people have actually signed up for this warranty, I guess is what you would call it?
I think maybe we'll start just with a report then from Josh, if you would, on this. But
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, the CAO had prepared a report upon this issue. Just in light of the many concerns that we have heard here at Town Hall about the program, I think that, the front counter at Town Hall is feeling similarly to council in that we have received an influx of requests. And this has happened on several occasions now, mostly in line with the mail-outs that do happen, and they are regarding some of the marketing practices that Service Line Warranties Canada has used. So I'll give a brief overview of the report here that was prepared by the CAO. So this was a program that was authorized in originally June of 2022. And what it did was it entered the town into a 3-year agreement with Service Line Warranties to provide low-cost additional insurance for the private portion of water and/or sanitary connections. So in other words, there are some folks whose home insurance policies would not cover those types of damages should there ever be an issue with, the private water or sanitary connection line on a residential property. And really what this is meant to do is to supplement your home insurance policy. So if there's ever an issue and the town is required to call a contractor that would come and, utilize a camera or similar equipment to assess any issues that exist, if it's found out that the issue is on the private side of the property line, ultimately the homeowners are responsible for that. And it's a common issue for that type of insurance coverage to be outside of the scope of regular policies. So this is a program that is endorsed by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and it's ultimately provided under the local authority services. I did want to emphasize that this program is not specific to Elmer. Many neighboring municipalities are also participating in it for the exact same reasons. Just within this report, moving down, it's not providing the insurance option based on a for-profit model. And, I do want to reiterate that, the town is certainly not appreciative, and I think that we find that we're in agreement that some of the marketing practices that are being used by this Service Line Warranties Canada could perhaps be confusing and are legitimate cause for question. However, I do want to really emphasize that, the program is legitimate and it's not a scam. It's not something that's fraudulent in any way. Just moving through the report, the town has taken some steps to try and clarify this program to the community. One of those is through making a fairly large update on our website, explaining the purpose of the program and explaining why it's worth participating for certain individuals. And really what we're doing when we receive customer service related inquiries is encouraging community members to review their own home insurance policy. And, there's a chance that it's already included on there, and if it's not, we're assuring the public that, it's absolutely not a mandatory program to participate in, but you might wish to if you're wishing to add some additional insurance. And furthermore, I will note that the term of the contract is until December of 2025. And at that point, staff are recommending a further report on the program effectiveness would be provided in the summer of 2025. And at that time, council would have the ability to decide on whether or not they wish to permit that availability of the optional insurance coverage within the town boundary. And finally, I'll note, if council is looking to, take any action or take any direction on this, one recommendation that I might make is that, despite us having entered a contract with Service Line Warranties, I think it would be possible for staff to reach out to the vendor and advise that, we are receiving an influx of complaints around their marketing program, and that, perhaps if they wish to alter it, we could help them through, publicizing some of their information on our social media, or through another avenue. Because ultimately, again, it's staff's opinion that this is a program that there is some value to for certain residents within the town. I think this is an issue of marketing, and it's been widely misunderstood by many, and for good reason. And with that, I'm not sure if the Director of Operations has anything further to add, but I'll see if he does.
Your Worship, no, I think that's a good summary. I know that there are residents that are out there that are helped by this program. It's not unusual to have the issue on the private side. I've recommended to residents myself, like, if it's not urgent sign up, there's a 30-day waiting period, but it's not like a precondition that, oh, we're not going to cover. It's not like insurance where, oh, you already had that issue, it's not covered. If it's available to you, it's an easy way to look after what could be, you know, a $6,000 repair bill on your side of the property line. So I would agree with Josh that, yeah, some of their marketing could use some work.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was my comment as well. I think that speaking to the vendor, finding another way to do the marketing program, I've heard things like it even comes in an envelope with the town logo on it, which is very confusing for them, and putting it on our social media. I think it's a good program. It just isn't brought forward as well as it should be, and so people are confused.
Councillor Rahi, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I don't disagree with the program, but I do disagree with how they're trying to push it onto people in the way that it's brought forward to people. And it's not my type of thing, I'll fix it myself, but I don't think that people should get 2 or 3 or 4, you know, pieces of paper in the mail with the town's logo on it saying that this is what we're suggesting. It should be an option, but I don't think we should be pushing on people at all.
Councillor Oslage.
Yes, Your Worship. All I wanted to do was an explanation of the program, and you provided that. And I have got several letters in the mail. I'm not going to sign up for the program, but I wanted to get it out to the public, the explanation of the program, of the service. And as a side note, and an additional comment, you could take an ad out in the Elmer Express to explain this process. Thank you.
Right, we took a vote on pulling this item from the consent agenda, but we really don't have a resolution, do we? Do you have a?
Through you, Mr. Chair, or through Mr. Mayor, rather, as I stated before, the town has entered into a contract with the term ultimately concluding in December of 2025. So I would say that, you know, while it's an option for staff, I think that it's certainly possible for us to reach out to Service Line Warranties Canada and advise of the concerns that we're hearing in our community. If anything, I think that feedback would be valuable, and if I was operating that, you know, that organization, I would want to hear it. So I think that that's certainly possible for staff to take care of. However, I can't guarantee that it'll change their marketing practices due to the nature of the contract. But I think, like I said, staff can reach out and see if there's anything that we can do to encourage them to amend their practices with respect to marketing.
So we can leave it that we listen to some direction for staff, all right, based on pulling this item 7.4. We'll carry on to the next one then. We don't need any vote. We've already had a vote on pulling it. Okay. I see that Mike Holmes is here, I think. So I think we will begin the item number 5 with the number 5.2, which is a report by the Director of Operations. So do we have a resolution for that?
Yep. That report, Rec. 0723, entitled Request for Facility Improvements, Optimus Park Ball Diamond, be received for information, and that council direct staff to continue to examine and consult upon this issue and present further information at a future date.
Thank you. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Desrosiers, seconded by Councillor Rahi. Rob.
Thank you, Your Worship. I first want to take a moment to thank Mr. Holmes and Minor Ball for their patience and for having some really frank discussions, open discussions on Optimus Park. I truly believe that Elmer is a better community having this organization looking after the interests around the kids and Optimus Park. So I wanted to recognize that there was a fair bit of level of effort back and forth, and I think that I appreciate that for sure. You'll also notice because of those discussions, there's a little bit of something missing in my report, and I was hoping to present to council the usage reports. We looked at all the booking. We also went back and did the review of our files, in our handcap files, to find out the booking, how often if it's used. I purposefully left those out of the report. Depending on how you slice that pie, I could show council that it's completely underutilized, or it's the most utilized facility that the town has. It all depends on how you slice that utilization. I really felt that including that in the report probably wouldn't lend much to the conversation or decision-making, and I think Mike has probably better numbers that represent how many people are using the facility, so I thought I would just kind of leave that to him to explain to council of how many kids they have in the program and how often it's used. It's probably a better matrix than anything that I could have provided in my report for sure. Probably it comes as no surprise where staff kind of landed on this issue. We're recommending that we have maybe more of a comprehensive plan rather than piecemeal it out. If we had a comprehensive plan with all of the wants on there, we could prioritize it, we could make plans to address some of them, we could offer them up for grant opportunities. But I'll just take a minute to go through the report to tell you how we kind of landed on that recommendation for council. The background, we all kind of know how we got here. The clay surface. The clay surface performs as the vendors say it does. From all of our contacts with other municipalities, all of the claims that I'm hearing are true. There's a truer bounce. The players enjoy playing on it more. It lends less player injuries. I know if I was sliding into second base, I'd rather be sliding in on a clay surface. There's no surprises there. There are no significant maintenance challenges if the council decides to put in a clay surface. There's no additional equipment requirements, so there's nothing really substantive that council or that staff would have any concerns if council decided to go with the clay surface. The user group consultation, we truthfully didn't get a lot of feedback from our request to meet with other user groups. Our consultation is primarily with Elmer Minor Ball, and as they're the proponent of this, they were happy to engage and provide a lot of feedback. They liked the diamonds in Springfield as sort of the model of what was sort of their preferred solution. During those consultations, though, Mike identified, or Elmer Minor Ball identified, a lot of other improvements that they'd like to see in the park. The dugouts, for example, aren't covered. The kids are out in the sun. So there's some other things that sort of are on the hit list there that they would like to see either down the road or in the near future. Those came through on the discussions. One other thing that they identified is that Elmer Minor Ball does have a lot of volunteers that are willing to help, but they do see some difficulty engaging with the town, the volunteers. This isn't unusual for a municipality and volunteers to struggle with kind of that working relationship, and I'll go into that in a little more detail. But I did feel obligated to bring that to the town's attention. Great group, and they have volunteers willing to do stuff at that park. With respect to the recreational priorities, I believe we kind of got off the ground on this as a result of sort of work that was done in 2022 on that diamond. The contracted work that was done there didn't perform. It wasn't performing. It was sort of a safety issue. This spring, the contractor did come back and fix those deficiencies. And I always say that the mark of a good contractor, any contractor can make mistakes. It's how they address those mistakes. So kudos to them. They came back, they fixed up the diamond, they worked with staff to get it. So I would say that the diamond there is performing as is expected for that surface. I don't think there's, in my opinion, I don't think there's any issues there. It would be our opinion that the installation of a clay surface does represent an enhanced level of service. And really, that should be prioritized by council and not staff. And when I look at the recreational priorities, I've tried to include in there some of the factors that would influence your decision. I wanted to get them down and put those in front of you, but really, it's council's job to steer and our job to row. So I did kind of put that back into council's court. It's not unusual for a municipality to accommodate a enhanced level of service if that's what the council chooses to do. But it is maybe staff's role to recommend how we're going to finance those. So I did feel comfortable, if it's the council's decision, to look at the clay surface, to suggest that, some areas use user fees. If it's only to the benefit of one group, you may want to look at, that group, if they want the enhanced level of service, should maybe pay for that level of service. And I suggested that, just for ease of calculation, let's say a clay surface goes 20 years before you have to do something, maybe you take 1/20th of that, and that's what your fee is. That's not the math I would suggest using. I just used that sort of as an example. The other way that a lot of these things get funded at an enhanced level would be public-private partnerships, using sort of maybe the Springfield model as well. Council may choose to fund a portion of the project if they choose to do the project, to suggest that the user group also provide a portion of those funds. This would then be consistent with other groups that came forward as well. If you had the pickleball team or the track team or the swim team that wanted an enhanced level of service, you could say sort of, this is the model we use. Some sort of model, I suggest, council or staff are suggesting, some sort of model would be appropriate when you're talking this as well. And as far as the non-financial donations, I'll backtrack. Elmer's really not the only municipality with the volunteers. When you start taking volunteers and equipment onto public lands, the liability and the challenges, we all have the same insurance provider, we've all heard the same horror stories, so we all become sort of risk adverse of working with the volunteers. And that the Parks and Beautification Advisory Committee has taken up this challenge, and they're looking at perhaps a vehicle that they could present to council in hopefully the very near future, maybe this fall, that would allow us or allow the town to leverage some of those opportunities, because I do think those are opportunities missed. If there's a user group that wants to, have a facility that's, not world-class, but premier, and they're willing to really work to do that, we need to find a way to sort of facilitate that. And that's something that the Parks and Beautification Committee are sort of reviewing right now, underway as well. So I hope I've sort of summarized it as best I could for council.
Thank you very much, Rob. Mr. Holmes, did you just want to be here to answer questions, or did you want to make a statement before council asks some questions?
I can say a few things, just to elaborate. Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Rob and staff as well. They've been excellent the last, year or so. We've been working hand in hand and communication back and forth, and it's the first time we've actually felt that someone's listening and working with us and, willing to do something for us. So, Rob, thank you and your staff. Appreciate it. Just a couple things on the report. Rob talks about a comprehensive study, which we completely agree with. That's probably the right approach, right? Just let's figure out what are the things that we want to do. We'll set a prioritization list, and then we can go from there. I guess I'm not sure what the expectations would be from Elmer Minor Ball, if you want us to go out and get prices and look into different vendors, or if it's better for the town to do it for budgetary purposes, I guess let us know, right? The only thing I'm worried about is timing, right? We've been asking for improvements for a long time, and things just kind of always move out, and I know that's kind of what happens. But at some point, we would like to see some kind of concrete action. Service level enhancement, Rob talks about. I can certainly see how through the town's lens that would be looked at as a service level enhancement, but us, we're just bringing facilities up to the 2023 standard, right? Like whenever we go away to play and see other diamonds, everybody's playing on clay now, right? So I played baseball at Steen and Optimus 40 years ago, and they haven't changed a bit, right? They look exactly the same as they did 40 years ago. The playing surfaces are the same. The fences and backstops are the same. Like nothing's been improved in 40 some odd years, right? So at some point we have to update to kind of match the 2023 level of standard, right, and safety. We have 363 players in Elmer Minor Ball this year, which is a record for us. I've been doing baseball in Elmer for 11 years. We started with 35 players when I took over. It's taken a lot of work, hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of free time donated to the town to try to build up a program for baseball for kids to play, right? I don't know if there's any other youth program in Elmer that has 363 kids playing on it, right? You add that with, parents coming to the diamond with the kids, siblings coming to the diamonds with the kids every week. There's probably 1,000 people at each diamond every week, which is a pretty significant number when you think about it, right? Probably no other facility in the town is getting used that much in the summertime. You talked about other user groups, and no responses from anybody else that Rob and staff reached out to, but I can say for certain that Springfield is the place that people want to play. If they don't have to play in Elmer, they're not going to want to play in Elmer because you're playing on gravel. They want to go play on nice diamonds in Springfield where there's nice, soft, and all the benefits that Rob talked about is true, right? So when I talk to people that play baseball, the first place they choose to play baseball is Springfield, not Elmer. So that's why you probably aren't seeing any other bookings, because they're all going to Springfield. Some of the other things that Rob talked about we're looking for is not just improved playing surface, but the backstops aren't nearly as sufficient as they should be. Most places have double or triple the size of backstops that we have today. It's scary to watch sometimes at games where you got young players or young families watching their young players play, and balls are going out and just missing a baby stroller or another young kid walking around, right? Like, we've had some pretty close calls. Luckily, nothing's happened, but eventually something's going to happen, right? So if we can try to get some taller backstops in there to keep the ball in the field of play, that would certainly be a benefit to us and the spectators. The covered benches we've talked about. We don't need anything really crazy. We don't need some great big structure or a dugout in the ground. We just want to get covers on top of our benches, right? So we could do that in a number of ways with a wood structure, or we could use, canvas, whatever, right? Something probably fairly low cost. And we're looking into ways that we could fund that as well. Just get town approval and the town can put them up if they want, but we're looking at some different ideas there that might be lower cost than we originally thought.
Okay.
And then the last thing that we talked about was actually part of Andy's accessibility grant that he was applying for, was the paved paths to the park. There's some pretty big holes as you're walking up to diamonds, and if it has it had a rain the last couple of days, you're walking through about, 6 inches or so of water to get to the diamonds, so you end up getting there with a soaker, and, people trying to push strollers through the mud and the swamp at Steen is pretty bad, right? So if we could just get some raised walkways to the diamonds, it would make it look a lot better and a little more professional and town-like, right? So, in a summary, our diamonds right now look like something you would have saw at the back of a school, back 20 years ago when they had diamonds at schools, right? But to compare them to what we're seeing when we go out of town and visit other places, they're nowhere near the standard that other places have. So that's where we're looking to go, and we would be willing to pay some increased fees to get some improvements, right? And we're always looking for talking to service clubs about help that we can get, right, to do some things. So we're willing to try to go out there and solicit some sponsorships and some service clubs and, pay a little more ourselves to get the things that we want. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's all I have. Any questions?
Right, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Just remind council, the resolution states that council directs staff to continue to examine and consult upon this issue and present further information at a future date. That's what the resolution states. So think about that when you're dealing with questions. So questions, Councillor Van Raes.
First, I want to thank the work that both of you have done, working together and collaborating on coming up with some ideas and working together. So thank you both. As a parent and a volunteer and a coach, I get to talk to a lot of the families, so I just wanted to let council know that what Mike's up here saying, I hear a lot of similar things from parents, and we have a lot of families that are coming from out of town that come to Elmer because they love the way that Elmer Ball is run. And I haven't been out to Springfield myself, but I have heard a lot of comments about Springfield's the place to go for playing. So bringing our diamond up to par with Springfield and doing some renovations or some improvements, I think would benefit, because we're bringing a lot of families and a lot of people coming out of town come into Elmer to play. And if we have that improvement, then I think that hopefully would increase and maybe see another record number year, next year. I've been out, if nobody's been out on a Wednesday evening or a Saturday morning, there's a ton of people out there. It's a lot of families and a lot of players. So I know what the resolution is. I just wanted to put my support behind this and thank you again. And if there's any improvements that we can do, I'd support seeing that happen.
Mr. Chapman?
Your worship, I have a question for you. You talk about all these other ball diamonds that are wonderful. Have you looked into how they became wonderful?
Yeah, some of them are, I would say most of them do have some private help, I guess, right?
So I know you've talked to service clubs and things, but how much is Minor Vol willing to give towards the project to make it what they want? How much are you willing to work for?
So it would mean raising our fees probably, right? Which is something that I'm scared to do, just because like we serve a large demographic in different walks of life. If you come out and see it, like there's different folks from all the places playing ball, right? So we would not want to raise our fees so far as to discriminate from some folks from being able to play, right? That's the one thing that we've tried to do is keep our costs really, really low and just run like a grassroots program. So if we're going to give more, we'll have to obviously charge more, right? So.
And have you looked for private investors?
We've tried, but it's all we can do to get sponsors, right? To sponsor our teams individually, to get logos on jerseys and stuff, right? So we're not blessed with a large industrial base here, really, right? So it's a little more difficult in our center than maybe other centers like a St. Thomas or whatever, right?
Springfield?
That was a Green Lane donation, right? And if someone is really good at getting Green Lane donations, let me know, I'll put the work in, but I'm not an expert on trying to get those kinds of grants, right? So, and then they had Van Gorps came in to lay the clay, and then Marco came in to do the finishing on the diamond. So at one point, I don't know, 10 years ago, Van Gorps offered to do the same here, but it was turned down by the town, so.
And have you approached him recently?
Councillor Rahi?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Chapman, I thought you were finished. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I said, I'm sorry I interrupted you, or I thought you were finished.
Oh, I am now.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yes, the answer was no.
Councillor Rahi?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. You do a fantastic job, Mike, and I grew up at the top of the hill, and there's been new lights put up and some new bleachers put up in the 30-something years that I've been there. I was actually at Springfield for their fun day, and it's a nice setup. They really did a nice job there with the concession stand and how everything's kind of put in together. I think the biggest thing that we need to figure out here is the financial part of it and how it's going to work. And if you guys have volunteers, how can we get that set up so you guys can start working with us? And I would like to see something happen. I think it is a nice park. It is dated. It's time for something to happen. Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? In a perfect world, you would get everything that you asked for. So, we're going to try to make ourselves a perfect world. And I won't ask you this question because I think it's unfair, but part of what I'm asking is, if you had to prioritize what you would like first and second and third, and I don't want you to answer here unless you want to, but have you talked to Rob about that kind of priority?
Well, we've always talked about the playing surface being the priority, but then you're trading off, spectator safety with having the higher backstops, and you're trading off for player safety, right, with the better diamond surface. So it's something that we'd have to probably work together on to see what the best course of action is,
Sure.
what our priorities are.
Okay.
And talk to our membership as well too, right, to really understand what they are looking from us.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Rahi, you had one more?
I have one more question to you. Which diamond is more utilized? Do we need to have two, or is it better off, are we better off investing into Steen instead of Optimus, or is there a reason, is there a need for two of them, or is there a way that we can just have one better one instead of two subpar ones, or?
Yep, our older kids play on Optimus because it's a larger diamond, so they would be more susceptible to injury on the gravel diamond, right? So you want to use the higher performing diamond surface with the higher performing players. So Optimus would be the best candidate for a surface change, for sure.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. I will call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 5.4, we have a delegation from Patricia Hunter. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Patricia Hunter of St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership. We need a resolution first.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, that the delegation from Patricia Honter of the St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership be received for information.
Mover and seconder, moved by Councilor Van Ray, seconded by Councilor Desrosiers. All right. Patricia.
Yes.
I'm sorry, is that the way to pronounce
It's
your name?
Patricia, but if you didn't grow up rolling your R's, you probably won't get it on first try. I first have to say, as a project that's housed at the YWCA, we used to come into this building a lot, and it is vastly different than the last time I was through those doors. It's incredible to see, but I hope you enjoy your new home here. So I'm coming to speak to you and give you an update from the St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership, what we also call STELIP. We are formed in 2011, and we are federally funded. You can skip to the next piece. We are a federally funded project. So we began in 2011. I do recall coming and doing presentations here back when the project was in its very early stages. And what our role is in the community is we are a community capacity building project that works to better support immigrant integration. So this means that we are not direct service providers to immigrants. Rather, we work with the community to better serve and welcome immigrants. Our vision in the community is that St. Thomas and Elgin County communities will be a culturally diverse, welcoming, caring, and inclusive community that will retain current residents, welcome newcomers, and provide them the opportunity to successfully integrate, contribute to, and benefit from social, cultural, and economic inclusion. So this is what we're hoping to achieve through the work that we do. We do have a large variety of council members, and this composition is always changing depending on who has capacity and what we're currently doing in the project. I'm not going to sit there and list every single member, but we do have some representation from across Elgin County, specifically at the economic development level and at the library. But we are always welcoming and opening the table to more people if there's someone from this room who would like to join us. The priority areas that we're currently working under are workforce development and employer supports. So this is saying how can we work with our current immigrant workforce to help them integrate into the workforce that exists, and also how can we work with local employers to be better at accepting and leveraging the skills that our newcomers have. We also look at community readiness. So this is saying, how does our community at large understand the diversity that lives here? How are they willing to learn about their cultures, and how accepting are they of immigrants and diversity? We also look at the broad idea of equitable supports. So this is saying the supports that are available in our community, are they meeting the needs of the newcomers? This really looks at various things, including, is there access to interpretation if people cannot speak English? Are they able to get the supports that they need in order to thrive in our community? And we're looking at, that's just one example. There's definitely a lot of other pieces that we look at for that. Education is looking to see at education opportunities to ensure that our newcomers and immigrants understand life in Canada, understand how they can maybe increase their skills if they need to do that. But it's really looking at like English language learning, and also like understanding things like the laws of our country. And finally, civic and social inclusion is the last one on there. And that's saying, are immigrants integrated into the community? Are they participating in the community? It's really nice to see that there's projects to look to increase the infrastructure, and how many immigrants are accessing those community spaces that we see are really feeling valued in this community. I'm going to go over some of our areas. I've just shuffled the order, but we'll go through this. So some projects that I wanted to highlight that we've recently been working on are going to be working through. You can go back to that first slide, it's fine. So we have local research. So we have partnered with Western University, and we conducted a survey in 2018 to understand the experiences of discrimination within our community. We had 407 participants across St. Thomas and Elgin County, and this was in 3 different priority groups. Of that, we had 106 people who identified themselves as newcomers or racialized people. And then we had an Indigenous intake group and then white settled Canadians. From this research, we found that 7 in 10 immigrants had experienced discrimination in the last 3 years. And the places that we saw that they had reported the highest rates of discrimination were applying for jobs, attending schools and classes, interacting with neighbors, and attending social gatherings. So this to me means that our community is not necessarily ready and is not necessarily willing to accept immigrants, or there's some sort of cultural misunderstanding that's happening. We're currently also conducting an immigrant survey, and I would really appreciate the help from this council to get the word out. We don't have as many responses from Elmer as I would like, but this survey that we're currently conducting is asking about what services they're currently using, what is their experience with surveys, how is their feeling of inclusion, and what are things that we can do within the community to increase the supports or improve the conditions for them. The second project that I'm going to talk about is, this report is actually available on our website. I do have a copy, so if anyone would like to see that I can leave it here for you as well. The second thing I'm going to talk about is our culturally inclusive events guide. As we're seeing an increase of immigrants into our region, we realize that there is not very much understanding or a lot of experience working with making events that are mindful of the different people who could be in this community. So we created a guidebook, and this is meant to be an explorative project. It gives you prompts and examples of things to consider as and it also talks about just different considerations people from different cultural backgrounds, different religions might have, and how it may be different from what you've experienced before. This is meant really to provoke thought and encourage you to think about how you go about planning. So this is something that I would encourage that the town use in their events, but also distribute and get out into the community as well. We are going to be doing a campaign to do presentations with local groups to ensure that they understand how to use it and they understand the reason behind it. The next project I wanted to talk about is something that we actually started back in 2012, and we actually completed in 2012, but we've recently done an update, and I did bring a copy for you. So back in 2012, we found that our region had a lot of directories. If you're new to an area or new to a community, you don't necessarily understand what the titles of something would be. So it's difficult to navigate services. So we created a newcomer information package, and this is a guidebook that goes through details and helps immigrants understand things that they may not understand if they've come from a different country. It also points you to the municipal resources and shows people how to kind of navigate our system. So I have this copy here, so there should be a 3-ring binder. I know that you have moved around a little, but there should be a binder somewhere in this office that can be updated with the newer updated content. So all of these things that we've done are different strategies that we're trying to get and have successful integration of newcomers. And the reason this is important, I know that Elmer is comparatively a small community, but Canada has really set its sight on increasing immigration levels as a means to facilitate a larger workforce. So between 2023, which is this year, and 2025, every single year Canada has stated that they will be bringing 465,000 new immigrants into Canada. This is going to be the largest proponent to the workforce growth within our country. And we really need to be ready in our community, not only to accept them, but also we need to be thinking about how we should be attracting these people to ensure that our community stays vital. Specifically, there is a very deliberate intention. The Canadian government is understanding that we have smaller communities that aren't growing as fast, but it is a very valuable place for people to come to. Not all immigrants come from large cities, and sometimes if they come from smaller communities within their country, they do want to settle in something a little smaller. So places like across Elgin County, including Elmer, are very viable. So one thing that I did want to propose is the partners that we have been partnering with our research, which is called Pathways to Prosperity, and they are a conglomerate that works together with the government, with the education streams, so universities, and then also with service providers like us. And they've been the leads on these types of theories. So there's a thought about welcoming, caring, inclusive communities. And what this says is that there's 19 characteristics that comprise a community. And those are usually the pull factors for immigrants to come and stay in a community. So what they've currently done is they've developed one toolkit, and they're developing a second one to go with it. And this toolkit is looking to measure what you currently have available in the community. It looks at things from housing, transportation, looking at inclusive public spaces, and looking at are there immigrant responsive municipal features. So understanding all of these 19 characteristics, and then what the guidebook helps you do, there's 3 toolkits that go with it. It helps you identify them, helps you find indicators that work for your community, and then helps you compare those indicators across other comparable communities that you select. So it's a really important tool to help you understand how you compare to places like Springfield, for instance, or how you compare to other places across southwestern Ontario, or other communities that might be looking to attract immigrants. The second toolkit that will be coming out from this group is about how you can use this information to promote the region as a welcoming, caring, and inclusive community. So these tools, I've included them in the package. They're absolutely free to use. I can absolutely help you navigate them. I can work with the community to make sure that it's something that works for you, and it's a really incredible tool if you understand how to use the statistics and the measures to understand how your community sits within the broader context of Canada and Ontario. Sorry, I did discuss so let's go to the demographics. So I think it's also important to understand the demographics. Sometimes when you see numbers, it can be very misleading. If you're unsure what you're looking at, the story that you can pull from them can be really different. So I'm sure everyone here knows that Aylmer, after the last census, was just around 7,700 people. And you saw a very modest growth in this census period, which was a big difference from your one previous. You were one of the leading in Elgin County from the previous census, and this one, there was a lot of slowed growth. And I think that a big piece of that is that the census is done in May, and this community has a very large Low German-speaking Mennonite population, which had experienced significant amounts of discrimination during COVID. And we did see a lot of that population opting to leave back to Mexico. Traditionally, they do migrate back and forth, but it's difficult to tell because of the statistics, the way the statistics are measured. It's difficult to tell how many of them are coming back to our region. They are a huge driver to a lot of the rural farms in the community, but also a lot of the manufacturing that happens in this community. Their skills are very valuable. So it's unfortunately challenging we can't get good numbers on on how many are in this population, but it's also important to kind of understand that these numbers might not be true to the true experience of Aylmer. The median age here is actually younger than Ontario and Canada, so we're at 39.6, whereas Canada and Ontario are at 41.6 years of age. So that means that we do have a younger workforce, or younger population, and this, I believe, has to do with some of the larger Low German-speaking Mennonite families. Often they have most Canadian families have 1.2 children, whereas the Low German families are seeing numbers much higher than that. So because of your demographics in this region, you are seeing a younger age. And then recent immigrants versus overall immigrants. So in your town, you have overall 17% of the people who live here are immigrants, which means they were born outside of Canada. When you're looking at the recent immigrants, your numbers also appear very low at 75%, which is 1% of your population. But there are, because of the immigration of a lot of the Low German-speaking Mennonites, not all of them are considered immigrants when they come here. Depending on when they were born, if they were born before a certain year, they are considered Canadian citizens born abroad. So if they have never lived in Canada and come back to Aylmer because their family is here, they will not be measured in this immigrant number. So is a really difficult statistics. Bureaucracy really likes very strict definitions, and unfortunately, that's a challenge for that population. They can't access as many supports as someone who's an immigrant. They can access different supports, I should say. So it should come as no surprise to anyone in this room, but the biggest sending country for our immigrants are Mexico. So we have 55 of the 75 recent immigrants who came from Mexico, which means this is absolutely the biggest driver. And then historically, Mexico is outpacing the other populations by sevenfold. So we have 785 of those 1,300 immigrants who had come from Mexico, and then the two next up are the Netherlands and the UK. And I think that the biggest reason that immigrants isn't top of mind in this population is because of that visible minority number. Oftentimes when people in Canada think of the word immigrant, you're thinking someone who's a visible minority who looks different than we do. Some of the Low German-speaking Mennonites will come in plain dress, and they would have that visible difference through their clothes. But otherwise, if they choose not to wear those clothes, they would blend in quite easily with the rest of our population. So there is absolutely a larger population here, I think, that most people give credit. There's a very complicated immigration process to come to Canada, and there's a large number of different ways to get in. But the three largest ones are economic, family, and refugees. Traditionally in Canada, economic is the biggest driver. Typically, we're seeing 60% of all immigrants coming into Canada as economic immigrants, and about 25-30% is family. This is swapped in here. So what we're seeing is a lot of settled families are sponsoring their families to come live with them. There's a lot of family reunification, which means you have larger family, more collective spaces. And you have a smaller amount of those who are coming in through the merits of their education or skills. And then you've also seen a good number for this size community of at least 10 refugees have settled in the community over the last 5 years, or the 5 years of the census period. And of all the recent immigrants, it's 100% of the recent immigrants that have come into the community have been family class, which means there is no, for me, what this means is there's no attraction of those skilled immigrants that Canada is focusing the immigration on. And it's a big detriment to some of your skilled or your jobs that are looking for more skilled trades, or skilled, not even trades, just more skills. Another stat that they've recently added to the census is the mobility statistics, and these are really interesting as well. So there's more information you can get, and this is just the highest level I pulled out. But the migrants mean how many people did not live at the same address that they lived previously, and this is I looked outside of the community. So from 1 year before the census was taken, 425 people had moved into Elmer. If you change that number to 5 years, over 2,000 people weren't living in Elmer 5 years before they were asked that question, which means a quarter of your population was not living in Elmer 5 years ago, which means you're seeing a good percentage of churn. You're seeing a lot of people moving in, choosing this region, but it's not necessarily immigrants. And it could be a question, or it might be a good time to ask why that's happening. When we're seeing so many people coming into the GTA, not finding some of these southwestern Ontario communities. So I could talk for a lot more. We have a lot more projects going on, but I'll just book another time to come and visit.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from council? Councillor Chapman.
Your Worship, it's not a question, it's actually a compliment. I attended your newcomers welcome and Waterworks Park the other day, and it was actually quite interesting to see how many people have been here longer than what I thought. And people from Cambodia, from Jordan, Mexico, Argentina, all kinds of places. And even though some of them didn't speak English, and I was there for about an hour, we played a bingo game and went around and got information from each other, and it was quite enjoyable. So thank you for
Excellent. Well, I'm so happy you were able to come. We had 198 people attend the barbecue, so it was, and we're we never did an official count, but I think we had about 20 cultures represented at that space. So it's absolutely incredible.
Good. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the resolution is carried. Thank you very much. Ms.
Thank you.
Hunter. Okay. Next item, I think, is 8.1, Manager of Planning and Development. We have a resolution. Josh.
That Council of the Town of Elmer receives Report Plan 2023 regarding Planning Evaluation Report, application for consent to sever, number E45, and that the application for consent to sever relating to the property legally described as part of Lot 86, concession south of Talbot Road and known municipally as 181 Elk Street, be supported in principle with the recommended conditions for reasons set out in this report. And further, that this report be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and consideration.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councilor Van Ray, seconded by Deputy Mayor Barber. Heather.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't spend too much time on this report. I will just comment that this is a residential infill lot. It's located at 181 Elk Street. All the applicable planning policies were evaluated in terms of the provincial policy statement, and this application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. It was also reviewed against the County of Elgin's official plan. This application also conforms to the county's official plan. In terms of the town's official plan, I can comment that the property is designated low-density residential. This designation supports residential infill lots in this area. This application is in conformity with the Town of Elmer's official plan. And moving on to the zoning bylaw, the property is currently zoned R2, and the proposed frontage and lot area for this severance complies with the current zoning on the property. Application was circulated to staff for comment. Basically, what I would call very standard conditions are being recommended in terms of connecting to water and sewer, and the requirements for a lot grading plan satisfactory to the town. In particular, that the property needs to, or the lot being created needs to have an outlet to a legal and adequate outlet for drainage purposes. And these have been added as conditions to the severance as well. I've also received comments from staff, in particular the Associate Director of Infrastructure and Operations, requesting for the installation of the services to this property to coordinate at the same time as the Elk Street Capital Project. We really don't want to see these services be installed after we have put in a brand-new road and brand-new asphalt and have curb cuts. It's not ideal whatsoever. The agent on this file, as well as the owners, understand this. They've been provided these comments, and they're wanting to work with the town. They're in agreement with the comments that they agree, like it needs to happen. The installation of services needs to happen at the same, either prior to our capital project on Elk Street going ahead or during that construction period. They're in complete agreement, and we've incorporated that within the severance conditions as well. There's no financial concerns. Recommendation is that the application has been reviewed against the provincial policy statement and applicable County of Elgin and Town of Elmer official plan policies and the town zoning bylaw. Based on this review, it is recommended that council offer support in principle for the application to Land Division Committee, subject to committee's standard conditions, which are listed in my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Council? Seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 8.2. Josh.
That report, Plan 2123, be received for informational purposes, and that the Council of the Town of Elmer authorizes the Manager of Planning and Development to sign the attached letter of concurrence for the proposed shared tower, Inc. radio communication tower to be located at 55 Progress Drive in Elmer.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Van Ray, seconded by Councilor Rahi. Heather.
Again, thank you, Your Worship. Shared Tower Inc. is proposing a new radio communication tower at 55 Progress Drive. And I just want to bring your attention to the location at 55 Progress Drive and Figure 2 of my report. There is a plan that has been prepared, and this tower will be within a 15-meter by 15-meter leased area, leased from the owners of 55 Progress Drive, and it's going to be located in the northwest corner of the property. The proposed tower, its intention is that it will strengthen telecommunications in this area to better support increased demands for customer connectivity, the digital economy, and health and safety measures in our community. Shared Tower Inc. has followed the applicable federal policy for proposing a telecommunications tower. Public consultation has been completed. No comments were submitted during the public consultation process. Shared Tower Inc. is requesting a letter of concurrence from the town of Elmer to support their application to the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from council? Looks like a lot of work for a letter of concurrence. All right, thank you.
Yes, the work that I attached all the documents that they are required to submit, and that is by law. That is from Industry Canada. And they are required to follow, and I quote the policy section in here, it's the policy CPC-2-0-03, radio communication and broadcasting antenna systems through innovation, science, and economic development, ISED Canada. So it's a federal agency. And this is very specified.
Wonder how long it would take if it was something really big.
Yeah, it's federally regulated, it's a requirement.
Never mind, thank you. Thank you for the work. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Is carried, thank you. 8.3, Josh.
That report, Rec. 0623, respecting the 2000.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Rahi, Councillor Desrosiers. Rob.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a fairly comprehensive report from Mr. Poland. As the council is aware, the COVID severely impacted the swim programs around our pool. One of the staff's priorities was trying to get these programs and maximize that facility as best we can for the town, to meet with the Y, to go through, how can we get back to where we started, or even an enhanced level of service. Truthfully, we had engaged the Y early on to say we would even like to come to a report to council that said, setting aside our agreement, can we just simply even pay for some services? We realize it might not even be for the same price. You're doing, life-saving, but we just want, family swims. Really early on, we were told that it's really not possible, like the lifeguard shortages and those factors that impacted lifeguards are still there, and they're still kind of rebuilding from that process. So Mr. Poland put in there, just so council would have some sort of scope of the magnitude of the problem. But the good news is you can see we've really increased the number of pool hours and the offering this year. So we're able to sort of regain some of the position that we previously held, and hopefully we're trending in the right direction. You'll probably see an even more comprehensive report on how the town could maximize that facility. It's a great facility. It's open 2 months of the year. We should really optimize that. But the council has some challenges with that. But this sort of lays the groundwork for that report and kind of gets council up to date on where we're at. But the good news is Monday through Friday, 1 to 4, we've got some Saturday afternoon swims now. We've got Monday and Wednesday evenings and Tuesday and Thursday evenings, which should help bring a larger demographic of people to the pool, the families that want to swim, after hours. Not everybody goes to the pool during the day. So I'd be happy to take back any questions council has to Mr. Poland.
Council. Councillor Desrosiers.
I don't really have a question, more so a comment that I think this is fabulous. As someone that specifically utilizes the pool with my son, the previous hours from 1 to 4, I made a comment to the Y staff last year that it wasn't ideal for us because my son's so young, he still naps specifically at that time. So we had to actually do like a swim class, which was only offered for a couple weeks. So realistically, we're one of those people, or one of the, utilizers who can only utilize it for a short time. And now with this new schedule, Saturdays, evenings, we're able to utilize it all the more. And I don't think our family is an anomaly. I think that's a lot of families. So the fact that they're offering this is fabulous. So thank you very much for voicing that and getting that going.
Who else had their hand up? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's great that the hours have been increased. It's disappointing that there isn't anything on Sunday. You would think that would be a family swim day, and perhaps that's something that you could work toward in the future.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yes, carried. Thank you. Eight point four. We have a resolution, Rob? Josh, rather.
That report operations 2023 entitled CMO Promotional and Educational Promotional Agreement be received for information, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign an agreement with Circular Material of Ontario for the town to continue to provide educational and promotional material for the Blue Box program for a fee as outlined in the agreement.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Oslach and Councillor Van Rys. Rob?
Really, Your Worship, this report is fairly straightforward, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you. I read it, but I didn't totally understand it. So we do our own advertising now, and do I understand that we were offered somebody else to do it, but it's cheaper for us to do it? Is that what I'm understanding, or did I read it incorrectly?
Through you, Your Worship, right now our promotional materials are Blue Box and garbage. And as the council is aware, the province, through Circular Materials Ontario and their contractor, are now taking on Blue Box, including the advertisement for us. They have realized when they did their sort of analysis that our residents really go to one spot, and we've already built up a fairly significant, not clientele, or they know where to go on our calendar. So they have come to us and said, can you continue to promote our Blue Box stuff on your calendar? Your residents really just want to go to one spot, and we'll offset some of the cost.
Okay,
At, I believe it's 35 cents per person. So we would really continue to do what we're doing, and they're going to help us pay for some of the costs.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yes, carried. Thank you. Associate Director of Infrastructure and Operations, the Main Street Signal Optimization, Josh.
That report operations 2123 entitled Main Street Signal Optimization, Talbot Street and John Street be received for information, and that council approves an exemption to the procurement policy to enable staff to award work on the Main Street Signal Optimization project as outlined in report operations 2123 to create significant savings from the project's initially budgeted costs.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Desrosiers and Deputy Mayor Barber. And this is Terry, I think.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to give an update on the Talbot Street and John Street traffic signal optimization project. I know it was brought up that there was a request for an update on the project. So the goal of the project is to add detection systems to the intersection and perform other intersection upgrades. Currently, there are no detection systems in the intersection, and they run on fixed times. Introducing detection systems will allow the signals to function much more effectively with real-time traffic and pedestrian flows. As council may be aware, we applied for grant funding through the MTO Connecting Link funding. This is an annual funding that they put out. Unfortunately, the grant funding application was denied from the MTO this year. The bulk of the grant funding in the West region went to major asphalt rehabilitation projects. Seeing that the capital funding was included in 2023, we continued with the project. It came to our attention that Elgin County was completing a very similar project on various intersections around the county. And something that I left out of the report was that we actually had a request for quotation out at the time to complete a detailed design through traffic consultants. We reached out to the county and the successful supplier, and both were agreeable to utilizing a vendor agreement under the existing contract and maintain the same pricing. They really did acquire great pricing through their RFP process because it was a large project and they were completing several intersections over multi-years. So that was fantastic news, and needless to say, I canceled our request for quotation that was out at the time. Our electrical maintenance contractor will perform the installations and other intersection upgrades that are necessary through the project. The approach to work with corporate partners and keep the project in-house will provide roughly, this is a rough number, $100,000 in cost savings and still achieve the goals of the project. And on that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Council. Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Terry, so it's just economics of, or scale of economics that drove the price down that much? And with council's acceptance, assuming it happens, when would it be anticipated that it be completed?
Those are great questions. Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Barber. The one question was the timelines were 6 to 8 weeks for deliverables. The Wavetronics detection system could come before that, but Earth's timeline for some of the materials that they require is 6 to 8 weeks. And the second question was, yes, it was economics. It was, they had a request for proposal out for a multi-year project, and it included 5 or 6 intersections that they were completing. So that really drove the price down from the vendor.
Thank you.
Councilor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. To Terry, it's a long time coming to fix the stoplights on John and Talbot, and kudos to you. So for bringing the staff report to council, and I think it's about time that the stoplights have been fixed.
Anyone else? I do have a question, Terry. One of the issues with that intersection, and maybe I missed it in your report, I don't think so. One of the issues was that turning left going north is a real problem because there's no advanced left turn. Is this fixed in this particular update?
This is another great question. So we were utilizing a traffic operational report that was done for the grant funding. It was done by Greenlight Consulting. They gave several recommendations to change signal timings and perform other upgrades. One of their recommendations was that no phasing improvements are actually required. And so i.e. westbound and northbound left turn phases are not warranted. It's more of a timing, that appropriate timings be placed for northbound and the westbound left turn lanes to allow those turn lanes to clear. And the detection systems will be able to pick up if there's still demand. They'll give a max green time. If there isn't, then it'll go with a minimum green time and through traffic and clear the intersection. So the main goal of it was to get actuated vehicle detection systems in.
So if it turns out that these improvements don't solve a left turn problem, can that be added later?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that would be a fairly easy change at this point. This is the main issue is getting the detection systems in, and then we would be able to add in advanced screens if there continues to be an issue.
Councilor Van Raes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To Terry, could this potentially assist with people running the advance?
It
You may not be able to answer that. It may not solve the issue. I'm just wondering if there's a lot of, if you walk downtown a lot, you risk getting hit when you walk across the street. So because of everyone trying to beat that advanced left turn, wondering if this may help clear that and solve it.
Yes, and through your worship, that is another one of the proposed changes, is that the minimum and maximum walk times would also be adjusted, which will help clear traffic as well, but also enable pedestrians more time to walk. I would suspect that there would be less driver frustration if the signals are working correctly, and that people would not try to beat the advanced green. So it's really just optimizing the existing signals at this time. And we can continue to look at the timings and phasings. It's mainly to get the detection systems in place now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Desrosiers?
Thank you, Your Worship. Two questions. I don't know if you might be able to answer or not, but is there and maybe it was in the report and I missed it, is there a warranty at all with these sensors? And also maintenance costs, because technology isn't perfect. So if there's any type of hiccups down the road, do we have some type of, budget for maintenance on this, or?
Through your worship, there is a 5-year warranty on the Wavetronics smart sensors themselves. So the vendor would either replace at no cost to us or come and troubleshoot if there's any issues during that warranty period. Outside of that warranty period, it would be addressed through Earth, and we would be utilizing, or the plan is to utilize them for the installation, and they're very knowledgeable and familiar with the system. So that would fall under the general operations traffic signal maintenance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? 8.6, Director of Financial Services, a resolution.
That report, Finance 1223, be received for information, and that council approve the borrowing bylaw during the bylaw section of the agenda, which will then be forwarded to Infrastructure Ontario.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Desrosiers. And Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is basically just a cover page report identifying the outcome of the previous report with Rob last council for the loan application. So we spun the loan application out with Infrastructure Ontario the next day. All the documents have been uploaded. A copy of it is in here. We did do the loan application for $7.7 million. We kind of talked with council last time about decreasing that contingency amount, which allows you to debenture for $7.7 million. We're still comfortable with that contingency amount, so that's what we put the loan application in for. We should know within the next few weeks when we get the approval. So we'll need to do another bylaw for council to do the debenture bylaw, at which time we'll know the interest rate, and that'll kind of firm up the payment plan to repay over the next 15 years. So that's all this report is basically acknowledging, is that we need to make a borrowing bylaw in order to be attached to the application.
Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yes, carried, thank you. Item 8.7, Director of Financial Services, resolution.
That report, Finance 1423, respecting the Joint Investment Board bylaw, be received for information, and that council endorses adopting the proposed revised investment policy number 1.10 to support the joining of Prudent Joint Investment Board, and that council directs staff to present the bylaw to authorize participation in the Joint Investment Board, and further that council authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with the Joint Investment Board in the substantial form as attached hereto.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Van Raes and Councillor Chapman. This is Heather. Before Heather makes a report, I'm interested in saying the Prudent Joint Investment Board. Does that imply there is such a thing as an imprudent joint investment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you and to members of council. So this is also a cover page report You know, we've been through a couple different iterations of the background on this. So upon receipt of this bylaw, we'll be bringing it forward to the Joint Investment Board. It'll also be accompanied by a questionnaire filled out for various, you know, risk scenarios by myself and Andy. So basically, we needed a proper investment policy, which is also included in this report. The one that we had prior was insufficient. A lot of municipalities that are joining on to this type of investment are using the money not required and letting that all be taken care of by the Joint Investment Board. I'm not recommending that at this time. I'm only recommending that we move move equivalent to the 1.5 million that we have in the current one investment. I don't want to go crazy and, you know, give them all kinds of money and then have, you know, those risks. I'm not a very risky person, so I don't expect council to do that either. So this type of document that we're going to start adding to our budget process accompanies the reserve balance adjustments that we see quarterly, yearly, and also at budget time. So it'll be, there's a sample included in this report, and basically, we're going to take the reserve balances at year end, and as part of the budget process, and council can decide how much do they want, you know, of the money not required immediately, how much do you want to invest? So that will be an additional report done by myself to council through those quarterly, or through those yearly statements. So another report or another question I had from Councillor Barber, or Deputy Mayor Barber last time was, you know, how much are these returns? So I did go back to the report that we had submitted in 2022, and so the legal list over the past 5 years had returns of about 4.88%. The prudent investor strategy looked like it was about 7.34%. Now, obviously, these are, you know, really different markets that we're talking about. So overall, that prudent investor portfolio has outperformed the legal list by about 2.46%. Again, we're not guaranteeing these returns, but if it was me and it was my money, this is what I would do. You know, you can take a chance on this kind of stuff, especially when you have people that are managing these portfolios. The links are in there to see the people that are managing these portfolios and their credentials. So if you know, 2018 didn't happen, these returns would have been a lot higher. So I feel comfortable with the policy statement that's before council tonight. The bylaw has been prepared. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Heather. Talk about going crazy. I'm sure you would warn us if you were going to go crazy. Any questions or comments? Seeing Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. To Heather, I really appreciate your statement. If it was my money, this is what I would do. And that's what we have to think about when we're talking about the resources of the town. If it was yours, what would you do? Thank you for that.
Any other questions? I was also intrigued in this application that, you know, we talk about acronyms. I've never seen an acronym, MNRI, money not required immediately. I think people stay up late to come up with acronyms like this. Any questions? All in favor? As carried, thank you. New business and matters of urgency, there's none. Item 10.3.3, sorry. Council to consider giving 3 readings to.
That council gives 3 readings to and approves the bylaw 4223, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at the regular council meeting held on June the 7th, 2023, and bylaw 4323, being a bylaw to authorize the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for financing of certain ongoing capital work of the Corporation of the Town of Elmer, to authorize temporary borrowing from OILC to meet expenditures in connection with such capital work, and authorize long-term borrowing for such capital work through the issue of debentures to the OILC.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Van Raes and Deputy Mayor Barber. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, is carried. Number 11, inquiries by members. Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. Can Josh give us council an update on the downtown fire?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Oslach, I asked the chief building official before he left the office today, because I figured we might hear this question this evening. And he mentioned that the shoring work is complete on the Mr. Natural side of the building. So we're happy to hear that. That's obviously a large part of being able to issue the demolition permit for the building where the fire occurred. It's our understanding that the engineers are still finalizing the shoring process on the building on the west side, so in the current Scotiabank location. So they're finalizing that work, at which point the town will be able to formally issue a demolition permit, and we'll hope to see some progress on that site.
Thank you.
Any others? Item 12, statements and committee reports. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that our Gear Up for Safety was a success. We had approximately 71 children attend the rodeo itself, and then we had many children and adults also go to touch a truck that were not included in those numbers. So we thanked all the participants, Malahide, the OPP, the MTO, Elmer Fire Department, Elmer Police Services. And when I spoke with them, they were all in favor of an annual event, so hopefully this can be done again next year.
Councillor Oslach.
Yes, I only have one comment. Welcome to the summer solstice.
Stonehenge thanks you. Anyone else? All right. Report of the mayor. I don't really have a report. However, I did mention that on the last meeting that I would be starting something called the Mayor's Thank You to particular individuals in the town of Elmer. And so the first one I'm going to announce tonight. This person has lived in Elmer for over 50 years and has worked her career, all of that time in Elmer. She was the original founder of the Elmer Area Community Foundation and still a member of that group. She is currently on the board of Cherry Street. She was responsible for the town going with the Communities in Bloom. And as you recall, about 15 years ago, I think now, actually the town of Elmer was a national winner in Communities in Bloom. She worked for several decades, I guess, after retirement with the Environmental Leadership Program at East Elgin Secondary School, along with Duncan Sinclair. She was a counselor for 11 years. She has worked with the group that puts up Christmas lights in our downtown park. She is a honorary, I guess you'd call it, honorary member of the Chamber of Commerce and the BIA. And I'm sure I've missed something that she has done for the town. Her name is, you probably guessed it by now, her name is Judy Wright. So if you're watching, Judy, don't get mad at me. I probably missed something, but thank you for all the work that you've done. Okay. Notice of motion. Any notice of motion? There's no meeting close to the public. A motion to adjourn, and it's been more than 2 hours since we sat down here. So thank you for not thank you, but I was thinking a moment for a comfort break, but we're done. Adjournment motion, moved by Council Van Raes, seconded by Council Rahi. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.